So I want to introduce, although he needs no introduction, Paul Davis.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be back in Hutchinson, and I am really excited about this campaign. When I read the news that Patsy had filed, I must confess we actually had met because she interviewed me for a publication that she does some work for when I was running for governor, but I didn't have that filed away in my brain, and I think that I may have sent Steve an email and said, tell me about this Patsy Terrell, and he said, she's good. So I called her up and said, I'm ready to help. And I'm glad you've taken me up on it because this is a very important race. You know, all you have to do is pick up the newspaper these days and it's just more and more bad news about what's happening in Kansas. And fortunately, you have a very good newspaper here, the Hutch News, that does a good job of covering what's going on in state government, going on all across the state. And so you get a pretty good flavor for how things are going in Kansas right now. And every time that I think that maybe we've bottomed out, I mean, there couldn't be anything worse that's going to happen, there's just more bad news. You saw about a week ago that the state revenues for last month were down $45 million. That is a huge amount of money. And the revenue picture is now underwater for the next year, and we are going to be looking at a scenario where there will be more budget cuts, more and more budget cuts being caused by this economic development strategy of giving tax breaks to people who frankly don't need them and not being able to fund the core obligations that people expect from state government. You look at the economic indicators all across the state, we have had 4 years of negative gross state product. Now, what is gross state product? You've probably heard of the GDP. Now, I'm not an economist, but I've listened to plenty of economists who have said your gross domestic product is perhaps your best indicator as to whether your economy is moving forward or not. Our gross state product has gone down the last 4 years in a row, and we are the only state in the country that holds that very, very bad distinction. You look at the fact that there are hospitals and healthcare clinics across the state that have been closed as a result of the Brownback cuts to the Medicaid program and Brownback and the Brownback allies' unwillingness to expand Medicaid. And there's so many hospitals and other medical providers out there that are really wondering whether they're going to be able to continue to survive. Not to mention the over 150,000 Kansans that we could help if we would simply expand Medicaid like so many other states have done, and many states with Republican governors and Republican legislatures. What I think is I'm sort of watching all of this, what I think about frequently is the fact that our legislative leaders and our governor really are out of touch with the mainstream Kansas values that Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated voters share, whether they live in a rural area or whether they live in an urban area. And I think there are 4 really fundamental Kansas values that have been a hallmark of our state government and our state for just decades upon decades. Number 1, we believe that education is the opportunity for our young people to better their lives and better their communities. That's why we have always valued public schools. And you've known that no matter where you live in Kansas, whether it's in a town where you only have one school, or whether it's in Wichita or it's in Johnson County, you can get a great public education in Kansas. And people have believed that for years and years and years. And really, I think that has moved our state forward more so than anything else. Because people like my parents who came here in 1972 found that this was a place where their child could get a great public education. And I'm now seeing it with our daughter, who is 6 years old and is in first grade and is just having an absolutely wonderful experience. And I'm so thankful for all of the great public school teachers who frankly have just been taking a lot of hits from people in Topeka over the past number of years that get into the trenches and do the very, very important work of educating our kids. And they badly need more advocates in Topeka. And I know that Patsy understands that just as well as anybody. And she is going to be a very, very, very strong advocate for our public school teachers, our children, and our public schools as a whole. Linked to the issue of education, that second fundamental Kansas value is that if we are going to be able to move our communities forward, expand opportunities, we have to have a growing economy. And we have always invested in people, we've invested in our infrastructure, we've invested in our education system, we've invested in worker training, and that has helped us build a strong economic base in Kansas. But the economic development strategy that has worked for years and years is no longer the economic strategy that has been utilized in Topeka. When Sam Brownback and his friends enacted in 2012 their tax plan, they basically said, we're going to put all of our marbles into one basket. We are going to provide tax cuts to business owners, and prosperity will come everywhere as a result. Well, it has been an unmitigated disaster. We have seen state revenues plummet. We've seen all of those economic indicators show that we're going in the wrong direction. And we have an economic development strategy that business leaders are saying just isn't working and isn't going to work. So we've got to have people who understand how it is that we got to this place, and they're going to fix it. And we're going to get back to the basics of investing in transportation and infrastructure. I was very fortunate when I served as the House Minority Leader to be able to travel with Governor Hutchinson to Chicago, where the announcement was made by Siemens that they were coming to Hutchinson. And I remember that event very vividly because I had an opportunity just for a brief moment to talk to the man who is in charge of the American division of Siemens. And I said to him, I have one question for you. Why did you decide to come to Hutchinson? What's the most important reason? And he said, oh, hands down, your transportation infrastructure. We have to be able to move our products. You've got good roads, access to rail, and that is really the most important reason why we came to Hutchinson. So making sure that we have a viable transportation program is key to moving our state economy forward. And right now, the Brownback administration, the legislators who are backing him, like Jan Pauls, have taken over $2 billion out of our transportation program. Those are dollars that could be invested in our communities and can get those economic indicators moving in the right direction again. Kansas has always been a state where we have been pretty frugal with our money. Some of you may remember Governor Bob Docking's motto, austere but adequate. And we balanced our budgets. We didn't spend money that we don't have. Republican and Democratic governors have done that for years and years and years. This administration and the legislators who are following him, like Jan Pauls, have mismanaged this state's budget like never before. State budget is truly a disaster. Every year, they are having to rob Peter to pay Paul. They've gotten so desperate that they are now looking at children's programs that help low-income families who frankly don't have any help anywhere else if it wasn't for that program. They are willing to steal money from those programs in order to balance the budget to support the tax cuts for the people who don't need them. We need people who understand that we've got to get our fiscal house in order, that we can't spend money that we don't have, that we can't be stealing from good programs to support a program that just isn't working. And Patsy absolutely understands that, and she's going to restore fiscal responsibility again to Topeka. And lastly, we know that we have an obligation to take care of the most vulnerable among us. You know, Kansas, for many decades, was looked upon as a national leader in terms of the programs that we developed to take care of people with developmental disabilities. Those programs have been cut. They have been cut to the core. As I mentioned before, this administration has looked the other way. So many legislators have looked the other way when it comes to expanding Medicaid. It could help over 150,000 people and help keep our hospitals viable. I was driving through northwest Kansas a number of weeks ago, and I drive through the downtown areas and just see empty storefront after empty storefront after empty storefront. And then I see that community hospital. And I said to the person who's driving with me, I bet they are running on fumes there right now. They need help. And if we are going to be able to preserve the kind of rural life that has been the story of Kansas for decades and decades, we have to make sure that these community hospitals are going to survive. We don't want our community to be the next Independence, Kansas, that lost their hospital. If you're losing your hospital and you're losing your school, you're going to lose your community. And Patsy absolutely understands that we have to take care of the most vulnerable among us. 4 fundamental Kansas values that have been with us for decades and are being completely ignored by the people that are in power right now in Topeka. That's why we have to change course, and we have to change course in 2016. We tried to change course in 2014, and we were almost there. Unfortunately, I don't think that people quite comprehended the damage that was being done. But I think they get it now. They know it's broken, and they know who broke it. And so what we need is, we need people who have courage. We need people who are running for office for the right reasons, because they want to make a difference. I was so impressed with Patsy during that first conversation I had with her, because she really, without me prompting her, told me why it was that she was running. She's got strong roots in this community. And she talked to Jan Pauls on numbers of occasions, but she said to me, I think Jan has just lost touch with our community. You just don't see her here very much anymore. She's not responsive when people try to contact her. And that happens when people have been in public office for 25 years. I frankly think that Jan made a decision to change parties simply because she couldn't win as a Democrat and thought that she had to become a Republican to win. And she was probably right about that. But what does that say about her reason for wanting to be in office? We don't need any more people who just want to be there for the sake of being there. We need people who want to be there to get things done, who are going to get the state back on the right track again. And that's one of the reasons I am so excited about Patsy's candidacy. She's doing really well, and all of you deserve, you need to give yourself a pat on the back for the help that you've been giving her, because I have, watching from a distance, seen how this campaign has been rising. But there's a whole lot of work that's going to have to be done over the next couple of weeks. The forces of evil, as I like to refer to them, who have an endless supply of money, will be doing what they do in every single election cycle. And they will be out there with lies, and distortions, and all kinds of things that are going to try to throw you off guard. But if you continue to work as hard as you are working, if you can open up your checkbooks one more time to make sure that Patsy has the resources to place the ads, to get the mailers out, to print the yard signs. If you can spare a little bit of time to go out and knock on doors. I understand there's a gentleman here who's knocked on a couple of thousand doors, which is incredible, fantastic. Spare a little time to do that, to make those phone calls. You know, they're going to have a lot of money on the other side, but we can overcome that with a lot of hard work, a lot of discipline, and being efficient. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. This is a critical election, because if we can win this race, we're going to win other races across the state. And this will be the time at which we put the flag in the ground and we say that no longer are we going to accept failed strategies for growing our communities. No longer are we going to neglect our public schools. No longer are we going to ignore people who need help from state government, just a little bit of help to get back on their feet. We're going to change that in 2016, and I think this will be the point forward where we look back and we say 2016 was the year in which the pendulum shifted back and we started moving Kansas forward again. So I want to thank you for being part of this, and I think that all of us are going to have great pleasure looking back on this campaign and say that my time was well spent. I supported a person who's going to do a great job representing this community, who will be a leader and not a follower, who will know that she will represent the people who live in this district and not the special interests, whether they're Democrats, whether they're Republicans, whether they're voters, and whether they're non-voters. I am confident that Patsy is going to represent all of those people to the best of her abilities. So thank you for being here. It's great to be back in Hutchinson. I hope to be back again. And keep working hard as you can up until Election Day. And I'm going to be watching this race with a great deal of interest on election night, and hopefully we can all celebrate a very, very great victory. Thank you so much.
Paid for by Patsy for Kansas, Steve Snook, Treasurer.